So I'm going to try to do some year-end videos since it seems like a fun thing to do and everyone does it, so I might as well try to fit in. I plan to make at least 4 different videos. This one, which is going to be about the most forgettable games I've played this year, as well as one for the top, one for the worst, and one for games I'm looking forward to in 2023. With that, let's go ahead and hop into the 3 games I played this year that I will completely forget about. Number 3, Steel Rising. This may feel like a weird one, but it really didn't surprise me. This isn't meant to say anything bad about the game. I was really excited when I heard another Spiders game was coming out, but was disappointed when I saw it was a Souls-like. I was a really big fan when I first discovered Mars Warlogs and ended up loving Greedfall. Both Mars Warlogs and Greedfall would be candidates for some of my favorite games. So initially I was very excited, but then I saw the gameplay and I knew this probably wasn't going to be a game for me. Initially I'd stayed clear of it, but then I ended up seeing that reviewers I generally agree with, or just reviewers that I value the opinion of, were singing its praises, so I ended up giving it a go. While it can feel satisfying to beat bosses and the rhythmic combat of these games can be very enjoyable, once I set it down, I really find it hard to come back to and pick up the game over other games that I had in my backlog of games. Unfortunately for Steel Rising, the Souls and Souls-like games have never really been my favorite. I generally need a really engaging story to keep me interested in a game, or at the very least more interaction in the story. However, if the setting is something I enjoy, from time to time I can play through these games. Example would be The Surge 2 and Jedi Fallen Order. This isn't on the list through any fault of its own, which is why it's the lowest down on my list. Number 2, High on Life. This game relies almost entirely on the comedic value it brings, and overall I think the comedy is fine to good at times. There are some parts I don't like. That's pretty much all to do with Knifey. Unfortunately, this game felt like a chore to play though. I think that really comes from the game wresting control away from you to tell the story while also trying to seem like it's a retro-inspired, fast-paced first-person shooter. The two things don't really mesh well. I want the story to come out as I'm walking so that it's not really slowing me down or locking me into areas. This gets covered up pretty well in a first playthrough where everything is new and you're still figuring things out, but when having to sit through it on a second playthrough, it really slows things down. With that, there are also issues with level design which slows down combat when you get there. The game is linear, but the maps are not designed with that in mind, it seems. It's easy to get lost with no map system and a lackluster objective marker. It's easy to get tired trying to find out where you're supposed to go next. Eventually, I just stopped trying. I set the game down, and I have a hard time coming back to it. The game feels like it has some fine to good parts, but they were all put together with no consideration of how those parts were going to fit together in the end. Number 1, From Space. There is nothing to say here. This game is utterly unremarkable. It is the peak of what this category is. I honestly forgot this game existed until I went through the videos I'd made to come up with ideas for games to put on these lists. There is no depth to the content, and the game is able to play itself for the most part. This was disappointing considering the art was so good. What ultimately lands it in the I Feel Nothing list is that this game is fairly polished. Outside of not really having depth to the game, it's fine. The art is good and there's no major technical issues. There's nothing awful here. There's nothing atrocious, but at the same time there's nothing that would ever stick out as particularly enjoyable either. So those are my most forgettable games of 2022. Let me know if you agree, disagree, or have games you would add. Again, I'll try to have at least 3 more end-of-year list videos out to share my thoughts and fill the void while we wait for games to begin releasing in January.